Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Billy Retzalff and I'm the Associate Director of the Severe Behavior Program at the Munroe-Meyer Institute at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I'm here today to talk to you all briefly about ways that you can avoid, minimize, and manage challenging behavior from children, especially younger children or those with developmental or intellectual disabilities, while you're staying at home and social distancing. First and foremost, expect that problem behavior is going to happen during this time, even if your child doesn't typically engage in these types of behaviors. I'm sorry to say this because I know it's not what any parent wants to hear right now, but unfortunately, social distancing, although important, is also very challenging for children for a number of reasons. Their schedules are completely derailed, and in most cases, the structure that they typically thrive under has been dismantled. Preferred activities, some of which you may even use as rewards, are suddenly not available, and everyone in the home is stressed. So while it's understandable that we may see some more challenging behavior during this time, such as tantruming, property destruction, or even aggression, it's really crucial that you respond to your child's behavior in a way that minimizes it happening right then and there for your own sanity, but also doesn't teach your child that they can get away with those things in the long run. So for today, I'm going to first talk to you about a few things that you can do starting right now to hopefully see less problematic behavior from your child. And then also some things that you can do to assure that if you do see challenging behavior, you respond in a way that doesn't teach your child to behave like that more often. So first and foremost, have realistic expectations. What's really important here is that I didn't say don't have any expectations, but instead the key is that you set realistic expectations that your child can meet and that you can follow through with. So for example, you may want your kiddo to clean up their playroom. However, this might actually be a pretty large task. So instead, you could set the expectation that they clean up a specific area or a set of toys, such as telling them something like clean up the blocks. Once you've set that expectation, you need to follow through. So for example, don't let them play on their iPad or do another preferred activity until they have actually cleaned up those blocks. For younger kids or kids with limited skill sets, you may have to use hand-over-hand physical guidance to help them complete the task. So this is where you as the adult go over and you take your hand and you physically guide the child to complete the task. This is really great for kids who may not exactly know what you're asking of them. So, if I tell a really young child to put the blocks in the bin, that may be kind of confusing and they don't understand, but I can show them what I mean. By setting these really realistic expectations that you can actually follow through with, you're going to encourage your child to do appropriate behavior. If you make the task too hard or something that will take too long, what's likely going to happen is that both you and your kid become frustrated. Second, if you have a specific time of day that is more challenging or a specific activity that is more challenging for your child, try to make it easier for them. So there's a few different ways that you can do this. You can break something down into smaller steps. So have them do really small, easy portions of it a little bit at a time. You can do parts of the activity for them. So you may bring the bin over so that all they have to do is put the blocks in, rather than having to go find the bin, put the bin in front of them, and then put the blocks in there. Another thing that you can do is you can make this a little bit more fun for them. So you can, add something like a dance party to your child brushing their teeth if that's a really challenging time for them. Or you could cut up all their favorite snacks into really small pieces and give them that throughout the time that they're sitting at a table doing distance learning. And so if you do one of these strategies where you're trying to kind of like add something good, make sure that you do that on the front end, that you decide before the activity even starts that you're going to try and make that activity just a little bit better today. The reason we want to do this is because what you don't want to have happen is your child start engaging in challenging behavior, and then you go ahead and try to make it more fun. If that's the case, what you might teach your child is have the challenging behavior so that mom or dad makes the activity more fun. So there are all sorts of great ways that you can make activities more fun for your children. If they need to practice their handwriting, you can put shaving cream out on a countertop and they can do the handwriting and the shaving cream. All of those things are great to do. Just make sure that you do it on the front end. Third, try to keep things as normal and on routine as possible. So obviously nothing in our world is really normal right now, and you're going to have to be patient with yourself because it's honestly impossible for a parent to recreate the structure that school gives or regular therapy appointments provide. You're not a teacher and you're not a therapist, but you are a really capable person and you can set a new kind of temporary normal for your child and yourself. So, for example, make sure that you have a set bedtime and wake time. Um, do that every single day. Please have times that you're placing expectations on your child. Remember, we talked about their realistic expectations, and then you're also having time that's just for play. So it's really, really important that throughout the day, you're alternating between these times of having expectations set for your child and times of play. If you let all day just be fun and free play, what we actually see most of the time is more challenging behavior. And that might sound kind of weird, but what happens is when kind of left to their own devices for free play, kids start to get bored with the items that they're playing with, lose interest, and that's when you start to see more challenging behavior pop up. And so what you do is if you alternate between kind of you as the parent setting the expectation and letting them have their free time, you're setting it up that that free time is actually valuable and special for them. And so those expectations can be things like schoolwork or chores, but remember, they don't always have to be. It's just that the parent is choosing what's being done. So a lot of times the way we talk about this is the kid's way versus the parent's way. So on the parent's way, you might set up a craft and have your child sit down and do that craft with you for 5 to 10 minutes. Or have them help you make lunch. You could even say, you know, hey, I'm deciding right now that we're going to take the dog for a walk, or we're going to go outside and play bubbles. What's really the most important thing is that you are deciding what's being done during that time and that you're helping to ensure that there's variety in their day so that they're not losing interest in things. And again, it doesn't have to be super long periods of time that you're setting these expectations. Just a couple minutes is a good starting point. Finally, I really encourage you to think of problem behavior as communication for most of our kids. It happens most of the time because it works to get kids what they want at least some of the time. And this is kind of the really unfortunate part about this, if I'm going to be honest, is that most of the time problem behavior doesn't work for kids all the time. As parents, we know we shouldn't give a kid, you know, a cookie when they're misbehaving. But it works a really small amount of the time usually because we as parents get frustrated or, you know, we're kind of at our tipping point and we just give in. And because we give in sometimes, kids learn, hey, I should test it out to see if it's going to be one of those times. So I'm going to really briefly talk to you about some of the most common reasons we see problem behavior and how we can use that information to reduce it. So one of the most common things we see is that kids will have problem behavior just to get access to the things that they want or to activities. So this is something like, you know, your kid is having a tantrum and so you give them the iPad so that they'll sit down quietly. We also see that a lot of kids have problem behaviors to get access to adult attention or even kid attention. Most of the time, this isn't like really good fun attention like we would think a child would want, but it's actually usually something like reprimanding or yelling at the kid, telling them to knock it off. So if you think about an example of this, it might be that you're busy washing the dishes or loading up the dishwasher and your child starts to misbehave. And so you have to stop what you're doing to go in the other room and tell them to knock it off. What happened there, though, was you went from a situation where your attention was diverted, you weren't paying attention to your child, you were focused on something else, they had problematic behavior, and all of a sudden, now they have your attention, they have your focus. And so what they may have learned is, hey, one way I can get the attention or the focus of mom or dad is to go ahead and have this problematic behavior. Finally, kids also learn to have problem behavior just to get out of doing something that's asked of them. So remember when we were talking about setting expectations, well, not all kids like being told to do something specific. And so, for example, you know, you may say, hey, clean up your toys. And then your kiddo may hit their sibling. And you send them to timeout thinking, hey, they deserve a punishment. They need to go to timeout. But what they actually did is now they're not cleaning up their toys, right? Even if it's just for a little bit, they're not having to do what you asked of them. And so the next time they don't want to do what is asked of them, they may say, hey, I can have problem behavior and mom might not make me do it. Okay, so if those are kind of the common reasons that we see problem behavior, then we can leverage that information about how to respond. So first and foremost, if you're trying to minimize how much problem behavior happens, try giving your kids those things for free or for appropriate behavior. So for example, if you know you have to step away for a minute, let's think about our dishes example. before you're going to step away, go ahead and give them lots of attention. Get down on the floor and play with them for a little bit, and then step away, go do your dishes, and when you're done, come back and play with them again. This is kind of like the advice that you get of don't go to the grocery store hungry. So if your kid really wants your attention, you want to kind of give that to them before you get them in that challenging situation of your attention having to be taken away. So you're trying to kind of feed them before you have to step away. For some kids, this might be really hard, and they may not be able to make it quite as long as you want them to. So for example, it maybe takes you 10 or 15 minutes to load the dishes, but your kiddo can really only make it 2 or 3 minutes without your attention before they start to cry or whine. What you can do in that case is give your child lots of attention, go do part of the dishes, and then come back and give them attention again. Try to come back before they're actually having an issue. And so what you're showing them is, it's okay, we can do these little periods of time away from mom, and then she'll come back, or time away from dad, and then he'll come back. And once you've done that a little bit, you can start kind of increasing how long you step away for. I'm going to tell you the truth. For some kids, maybe it's like 30 seconds that you can start stepping away. But if you build in tiny little practices throughout the day, they're going to be able to start going longer and longer. And while it might be time consuming to do the dishes in 1 to 2 minute increments, it's also really time consuming to deal with problematic behavior. And so if you have to pick, a lot of times it'd be better to slow down what you're doing than to have to deal with the challenging behavior. So another thing that we can do is that we can make sure if problematic behavior does happen, we do our best not to give our kids any of these really good things. So when you're seeing problematic behavior, try not to give them any extra attention. You might have to step in and, deal with the situation if it's unsafe. So say you have a child who's climbing on something that they could get hurt. Instead of yelling at them from across the room, no, don't do that. Walk over, take them down, don't say anything else, put their feet on the floor, wait for them to start doing something appropriate, and then give them lots of attention. So, you take them down from whatever they were climbing on, kind of put them in the, down back on their floor. They start playing with a toy. Oh, that's so awesome. I love how you're playing with your toy. So that you're making sure what they're getting your attention for is the good thing, the thing that you want to see more of. Same with, giving them access to something like an iPad or a favorite treat. If you see your kid doing something that you really like, that you want to see them doing more of, that's the time to provide them with kind of that special reward or prize. If you see them doing something that you wish they would not do ever again, that is not the time to say, hey, don't do that, here, play the iPad instead. Finally, if you know that you're at a point where you can't follow through with this, you know that if your child starts doing something inappropriate, you are going to reprimand them. You're going to tell them to knock it off. You're frustrated, and you can feel that you're going to give in. You know that you're going to give them that iPad so that they just stop doing the inappropriate thing, because right now is just not the time for it. That's okay. We are all going to have rough days. And so if this is kind of where you're at, just don't set the expectation. Don't ask them to clean up anything. Don't tell them they can't have the iPad. That's a great time to give them some extra screen time. Don't try to step away and do the dishes. Keep your attention on them, and, let the dishes stay for one more day. It's not going to do any harm. It's really, really important that you kind of self-check, am I able to manage these recommendations or not? Because the worst thing that we can do is wait for our child to really, really explode and start tantruming and then give in to them. Because if you do that, what they're going to learn is, okay, Dad didn't give in when I just kind of cried a little bit, but once I really exploded, Dad gave me what I wanted. So the next time I want that thing, I should just really explode so Dad will give it to me. So know that it's okay if you're having a day where you feel like you just don't have it in you, but don't push it then. So instead of asking them to clean up, you could either just let the playroom stay messy, or you could make it a choice for them. You could tell them something like, if you clean up the playroom, you can have an extra 20 minutes of screen time. If you don't clean up the playroom, that's fine. No big deal. Okay, so a quick recap. We are living in a really challenging situation, so be kind to yourself and to your children too, because we are all definitely going to have bad days. You need to just focus on setting realistic expectations. And remember, those are expectations that are realistic for your child to be able to complete and realistic for you to follow through with. Find a routine that's simple and works for your family. Don't overdo it. You just need to focus on consistently putting small time frames of structure in throughout the day. So again, think of this as your child's way versus your way, or the parent's way. That there are times of the day that we're doing the parent's way and the parent is leading the activities, and then there are times that we're going the child's way and we're letting the child lead. Remember, if you know something is extra hard for your child, there's a challenging time of day, a challenging activity, do something to try to make that a little easier. You can make it extra fun by, adding in a preferred piece to that. So the example I gave was like a preferred snack or some music. You can also make the task easier by breaking it into smaller steps, or even by doing little portions of it for them. Finally, think about what your child's trying to communicate with their problem behavior. Find ways to give them those things for free or for something appropriate. And then make sure that if they do misbehave, you do your best not to give them anything good for it. If you don't have it in you to kind of battle with something right then, just give in right away rather than waiting till midway through that huge meltdown to say, okay, fine, just happened. So I hope you found this helpful. Be sure to leave us some comments and let us know what questions we can answer in future videos. We know this is a really challenging time for families, so give yourself some grace and patience, prioritize your family's mental and physical health, and don't be afraid to reach out for support. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful night.